Once we add the five wandering stars, the wanderers, to the sun and the moon, which are also traced down their unique paths across the sky, it's easy to get an idea that you get a total of seven major heavenly bodies. And these ancients imagined that these seven were special gods overseeing the earth below, the watchers. For instance, the Babylonians referred to the ever watchful eye of Shamash, the sun, who notes all things, very similar to the idea of the one-eyed Odin overlooking all things from heaven. Um, a prayer to Mars, Nergal, states that with sin, through the sun, it doesn't have it in here, but through the sun in heaven thou perceivest all things. This shows you where they understood already the idea that the moon was lit by the sun, and that through Shamash reflecting off of sin, this is what caused light through the nighttime. In fact, they teach the people in the Bible this effect through someone that knows this from the Babylonians. So you can compare this to the Hebrew notion that these seven lights are wandering stars, are the eyes of the Lord, which range to and fro throughout the earth. You can find this in Zechariah 4:10, or actually read the whole fourth chapter, and it'll show you a lot of information about astrology and astronomy relating to all of this. An odd thought here, though, is that when they talk about Satan and how he goes to and fro throughout the earth, when we look at these, which one is that? There's sources down below there. Shamash, who's also known as Babar and Utu by the Akkadians, and Babar by the Phoenicians and the Persian people. Interestingly, Babar is the look of molten metal, and or shiny metal, but usually molten metal. You find that Babar is listed as being the people that made the molten metal, and so the sun looks like molten metal. But Shamash is the sun god, and he originally was the son of the heavens and the earth, of On and Onto, and his deification got changed whenever you see the Marduk incident come in, and everything gets changed in the cosmogony a little bit. But in the first part, he was known as that. Later, in Akkadian forms, he's known as the son of Sin, the moon, and Ningal, the wife of death, or the wife of the king of the underworld. He rises from mountains with rays out of his shoulders. He enters and exits the underworld through a set of gates in the mountain. In Gilgamesh, he exits from Mount Mashu, which would be the farthest west point in Africa. And past that point, of course, is the abyss, again, of the great ocean. They felt like they were fairly well surrounded by water everywhere, but they do have a round showing to this by having the dome above and then the dome below. This would make a ball. Whether it looks a little bit more like a clamshell or it looks a little bit more like a round thing. They believed we were round, like the other things they saw were round. This was related to people whenever they saw the eclipses and things, but I digress. This set of gates is guarded by scorpion people, supposedly, people that have a poison sting. He travels both on foot and on a chariot, pulled by fiery mules at first, and then later you can find that he's pulled by fiery horses. They don't have horses in this area. He's never pulled by camels or anything, but he upholds truth and justice. He is a lawgiver and informs oracles. He is the light. And Nergal is seen as a corrupt aspect of his nature. Well, whenever you go into the underworld, he would be the king of the underworld, Ningal's husband, and he is the god of death. Shamash was the god of light and life, and Nergal is the god of darkness and death. Each morning, Utu rises, or Shamash, from the interior of heaven, with that dome we were talking about, with rays out of his shoulders in the east, and crosses the firmament and all heavenly luminaries, before finally re-entering through the corresponding set of gates in the west off Africa. This means the sun god travels to the underworld every day, becoming one of its luminaries of the land of no return during the nighttime. Now, this shows you, this also, whenever they talk about it in the books, gives you another revelation that it might be a round earth, because whenever they talk about it, it's one of the first times they mention as above, so below. They talk about the dome being above. They say as above, so below, and during the nighttime, he is the luminary over the gods of the underworld, swinging back around on this side. I could see somebody with a candle and an apple going around, or a ball going around in a circle, showing you how it's lighting up the earth whenever they explain this. I mean, you could see somebody taking and going around with a light, and showing this type of thing. Because of this, Utu Shamash is one of the ever-returning deities of Mesopotamia. He's somebody who can return from death, or he can travel the depths below, entering its gate at sunset and returning to brighten up the heights above dawn every single day, bringing the light and life. The west gates are where the sun sets in the Epic of Gilgamesh, are said to be guarded by the scorpion people. Those are the half scorpion people. The first otherworldly challengers that Gilgamesh had to meet to win over and search for immortality. So it kind of lends you to believe that Gilgamesh may have come to North America, but they also refer to the fact that anybody that goes to this is a non-returning, or a land of no return, that nobody has returned from here. And this could be an example of the people that left to find this thing from Gilgamesh that ended up becoming somehow the South American and American Indian people. They would have gone that way to the west, straight out that way, doing a Columbus situation, looking for this land Gilgamesh knew all about. And he tried to find immortality. Maybe they will find it too. And that gets echoed all the way up through to the fountain of youth and the things that people were trying to find in America at the time. He's always seen as traveling, either this guy's on foot, he's pulled by fiery mules, or his horses, like in Saul Invictus in Greek and Roman times. The ancient Akkadians were able to pull together the actual mythos of what had happened, and I'm guessing who they killed off whenever they came in and took out the last of what would have been the ancient Sumerians. But when we look at Sumerians, when we say Sumerians, like in this point right here at 2500, 3000 BC, there is also ancient Sumerians before that had spread out and made everybody through all the areas, from the Babylon type effect and from floods. Separating people and stuff, that they had multiple floods, not the flood itself, but the flood itself did separate everybody quite a bit, and was not a flood over the entire earth, but of an area. Anyhow, I digress. Through these scattered verses and hymns and myths, they compiled a picture of the universe's Anki creation according to the Sumerians. The primeval sea, the Abzu, the abyss, or the void of space, existed for anything else, and within that the heaven, An, not Anu, and the earth, Ki, were formed, along with other things. The boundary between heaven and earth was a solid, and they even referred to it as perhaps tin, I think it was the hardest metal they had at the time, a vault that was above the earth as a dome. And the earth was a flat disk, or a semi-flat disk, of course, with mountains, and there was somewhat of an arch to it. I don't see this as Kramer did. I see it, this is Kramer's words, I see it though as being a oval that they had, almost like a clamshell inside of a ball. But I'll get there in a minute. Within the vault and without the vault, and outside of the vault, lay the gas-like Lil, or atmosphere, and it's where we get Enlil from. He is the Lord of the air, the God of the air. And the brighter portions therein are thereout, form the stars, the planets, suns, and moon. In my cosmogony that I see, they definitely had the sun and the moon inside of the shell, because you had to go past Shamash to make it to the realm of heaven, like in Gilgamesh. So you have to go past that shell. So what it really kind of looked more like probably would be a ovoid of land that was like this, and there was a dome around it, and then this ring was where Shamash dwelled, and you had to get past that point whenever you went to heaven. Well, this ovoid center, this flat earth that they try to call it here, you had to get right to the edge here and then go through a gate that went to the bottom. But on the bottom, you'd be now upside down, but standing right side up, and it would be there too. So the earth would have a shape like this with all of its mountains, and then there was the firmament that was above it, much like that. Anyhow, Kramer back in 63 had all this pretty well figured out, but he wanted to think that they only had a flat earth kind of theory. But they had the dome above, and they said so above, so below. So there would be a dome above, a dome below. The thing is that they thought that the earth went all the way to the end, and instead of falling off the earth like Columbus, you actually just went through a gate and turned under, and you were on the underside, walking upside down, but on the bottom side of earth. And if you went all the way across it, you could meet another gate where you would flip back up again and be back on this side. And this was the trail that the sun took. But you didn't want to get too close to the sun whenever the sun was there, because it would burn you up. So you had to make the trip of the gate whenever the god was on the other side. Anyhow, Kramer noted that each of the four major Sumerian deities are associated with one of these regions. An was the god of heaven, and he was the main god of the pantheon all the way up to about 2500 BC. And this is whenever the Marduk thing kind of takes over, and also at this point the Akkadians. And so it changed a little bit, and it says, although his importance gradually waned, Kramer notes on page 118, Ki is likely to have been the original name of the earth goddess. Well, let's go back to this An thing. Well, his importance gradually waned, and he went from the god of all the heavens to end up being listed as Uranus. And they don't seem to see that they know that the other planets are there. But if you take the fact that Enlil took over and knocked off Enki and made him the farther out planet, that would have set him past the five that we knew at the time. And so he was the first set past. The first set past would be Neptune. And then this god gets kicked during the Marduk invasion situation, and so he gets kicked to out past that. Now these are planets we can't even see, but that would be Uranus. And they say that his crown is fading. And you see that Neptune and Uranus both have a ring around them. So it shows that they actually had knowledge of this. If you look up the cosmogony that they had going on and the way things went down and how they pushed them to the outside. But Ki, here he has it wrong, though. He says Ki is likely to be the original name of the earth goddess, whose name often appears as Ninharsag or Ninma or Nintu. And it's likely that these two are the progenitors of most of the gods. Well, true, Ninma and Nintu were the wife and the concubine of An, the heavens god. But once you got on earth here, you made the other gods that were entities that were running around doing things with Ninharsag, who became queen of the mountains. If you go through the Sumerian tablets, you can see this point whenever she gets named it too. That before then she was Lady of the Plains or whatever, but now she becomes Lady of the Great Mountain and the Exalted Lady at the same time. And she is the lady who gave birth, but she was the virgin birth also. So, but he does like to try to throw a flat earth on it. But it would have been looked more like if you took a snow globe and had it like a snow globe, and you'd shake it up, you know. Well, if you had another snow globe attached to the bottom of it, and then the entrances are on each side, one here and one here, that you'd have to go to the edge of the snow globe and flip under and flip under.